And good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. It is Monday, August the 16th, and you are watching Talk About Your Community. This is a live LinkedIn show that is on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 11 a.m. U.S. Central Time. If you are here for the first time, welcome. Glad you're able to join. This is an open and interactive live stream that lasts about 30 minutes. And I try to bring on a variety of guests to talk about communities, community building, topics related to creating group solidarity, anything related to that, but especially the relationship between offline and online community building in that hybrid space directly in between. So with that, I will mention that we've got a couple of great guests that are coming up this week. In addition to my guest today, Jeff Sachse, and we'll introduce him in just a second. This Wednesday, you're going to want to mark your calendar to join me for two longtime friends, Becky Benishek and Michael Johnson, who are both with an organization called the Keen Entrepreneurial Engineering Network. They run a website called engineeringunleashed.com, and I've worked with them for many years now. And we'll be talking about their online community, the idea behind it, what entrepreneurial mindset means, and how it's involved. They're an absolutely stellar team of community managers, and I'm excited to be able to give them a bit of a spotlight on the show. And then Friday, I have a super awesome guest as well, Mr. Benjamin Vaughn, who is the founder of Disciple Media. And Benjamin is, Disciple Media is a partner of Clocktower Advisors. They provide a mobile-first community platform experience. Really amazing platform, great team. They're doing some amazing stuff. So I'm looking forward to having him on the show to talk a little bit about his platform and sort of their place in the market. So if you're in the process of shopping for a community platform, they're a great place to look, especially if you are entrepreneurial and kind of trying to start up a community for an audience that's maybe a little bit more mobile friendly, or they're looking for that mobile experience. Disciple is desktop as well, but that mobile experience is really fresh and great. So anyways, I hope you mark your calendars for those. I'll be posting up the streams to them pretty soon. And then all you need to do is visit the link and click remind me so that you get a notification whenever the stream starts. So that being said, just a quick shout out. I got a good morning from somebody out in LinkedIn land. Hello, good to see you. I'd like to introduce a longtime friend and colleague and compatriot here in the great city of Two Rivers, Wisconsin. He is an economist and a strategist. Has worked actually for the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development in the past. He's currently with the UW Oshkosh UW system with Oshkosh, and he is one of the organizers for a recent event that we held here in the city of Two Rivers that is called Snowfest. And so please join me in welcoming Jeff. Jeff, so great to have you on the stream. Hello.
And good morning, Todd. It's great to see you. It's one of these, always great to, be talking about Snowfest on a Monday morning. And it's also great to, put on the headset with the microphone. So I feel a lot more like a Twitch streamer these days than I do in my day job.
We all spend a lot of time on the live streams these days. I'm really grateful you could join me. This show sort of spans or runs the gamut between really local stuff and like large online global kinds of things, but the theme that runs through it is how do you get people engaged? How do you create communities using this new set of digital tools that we've got, but then not forgetting about the stuff that you have to do on the ground in real life, face to face, meeting people, talking to people, and getting them involved. This is one of the reasons I was excited to have you on the show, is so that we could talk a little bit about, I think our question was, festivals attract visitors and bring together communities, but how do you begin to spark civic engagement using these things? Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of your recent experiences as maybe an entry point to this, and then we can maybe go a little more general from there?
Sure. So I think that really the best place to start the conversation is to talk about the core business problem that we faced, which was, in essence, when you think about what Snowfest is and think about the history of Snowfest, Snowfest was really a summer festival that started, again, in a very unusual way back in July of 1936. but it was a festival that, was really known as probably the second largest festival every summer in Manitowoc County, which is where Two Rivers is located, for grounding for a global audience. But it's a festival that ran off and on fairly continuously from the early 1950s to the late 1990s. And the event had been away out of the market for 23 years. So the two issues that we really faced in terms of engaging a community and trying to build a market for this event is, one, the fact that you have a very strong nostalgic pull from people who had attended previous events that had a certain expectation. And then you also had a much younger demographic and really a more diverse demographic, both in terms of geography as well as interest, that had no grounding for the event whatsoever. So really, again, it's this idea of, the question we had from the perspective of the organizers of the festival is, how do you blend the nostalgic with the modern and contemporary to provide, again, enough history for those who remember the event fondly to build new memories, but to also provide that same kind of experience that anyone who's been to a music festival recently has an expectation of. And similarly, how do you build that sense of nostalgia both around an event, which then leads to fond memories of a community for those that, again, once we announced the return of Snowfest, plotted their return back to their hometown. And I think that's really, again, one of the fundamental draws and fundamental attractions that these community events can play in small communities that have seen a decline in community engagement, is really, again, just providing a centerpiece, in a magnet for attracting those audiences. But again, because of the fact that, we were a new organization with a first-time event, which, again, for the community was not the first time this had happened. Mm-hmm. The storytelling was, a big challenge. And the ways that the only way that we could cultivate that broader community and that broader audience was through digital engagement.
So when you talk about the digital engagement, what did that look like for those audiences you were trying to reach?
Well, by and large, it was, again, primarily Facebook and Instagram. It was generally social media, but I think that the other thing that we really did try to do within the last year was to think about other ways that we can collaborate with other organizations that have similar scope, and similar interests. So, for example, we did a collaboration with the Hamilton Woodtype Museum on printing up some of our festival posters and merchandise. It's a way of leveraging that institution's audience, to expand scope. And I think, again, every organizer does this with varying degrees of success. I think the other challenge that we faced in digital engagement is the fact, again, that this event, while it marked a 22-year return to the market, was also an event like many others that was delayed for the past year because of the COVID pandemic. So in that building that audience, we did have, again, significant traction moving into the proposed event last year. And what we've spent the past year doing, by and large, is, really pushing hard to maintain that audience. Mm-hmm. Because, again, we did not have the track record of a Snowfest 2019 and a Snowfest 18, 17, so on and so forth, to go back to that audience and say, well, we're taking a year off, come and visit us next year. It's really, again, that delayed launch, which, again, every entrepreneur struggles with, after setting expectations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I know you pressed the nostalgia button pretty hard on the mm-hmm. Facebook push. Mm-hmm. Whenever I saw posts that were coming through, because obviously I follow all the local Two Rivers, or Manitowoc County area chatter, mm-hmm. You were always kind of calling back with old photographs and sort of, remembering moments, asking people about what their favorite songs were that they heard at these events in the past. So that was pretty powerful. As far as reaching beyond that nostalgia audience, was there a different platform that you worked with to kind of reach other folks? Or I know you had a website. Mm-hmm. I suspect there was Twitter out there. I didn't pay attention to the full
Yeah.
digital strategy, but I know that there were some other efforts that went on.
Yeah, a lot of what we did in terms of, again, building a new audience was really pushed more aggressively through both the composition as well as the promotion of our music lineup. So, for example, when you look at our lineup for Friday evening, where we brought in 6 country bluegrass bands, we promoted the event heavily through, again, online groups focused on that genre of music as well as those entertainers.
So you went to existing groups
Mm-hmm.
to promote what was going on. Did you create its own group for Snowfest, or just had the page for it?
Yeah, we did have, well, both. I think one of the things that we will do in the future, to clarify, is we actually maintain multiple Facebook pages for the group, again, because of the fact that we, as the Friends of Two Rivers Snowfest, have our own organization page, but then we also had an event page specific to the information about 2021. And I think that, again, moving through the past year, the message across both of those platforms blurred quite a bit. To the point where, again, we will curate that presence a lot better. But really what we started to look at once we had announced our music lineup in March, one of the things that I know that my brother and I really started to look at where those bands themselves were promoting their appearances. And it's simply, again, just piggybacked on their presence. Because, again, we knew that for a lot of the bands that we had been working with, they weren't planning to promote their appearance specifically at Snowfest until such point as they had other dates committed. And, again, with the pandemic, even though we had commitments from several of our artists 2 years ago, that it was a much more uncertain time for those artists to find other venues to perform at, proximally or within the same kind of time frame. So we knew that we had to do more promotion of their appearances well before the bands themselves would promote.
And Jeff, so the event was about 3 weeks ago. From everything I heard, it went great. But if I could ask you, maybe with a little transparency, whatever you're comfortable with, how did it go? What were the lessons that you guys learned from running this? This was the first time you guys had run something like this. This is a large scale event. It attracted thousands of people, I believe. So I think it's useful to understand sort of like expectation versus result, and sort of what you might do differently going forward.
Yeah, I think that again, the event in general was an overwhelming success. We had about 5,000 people show up on a very warm weekend in Two Rivers, which is unusual.
Yep.
We had a lot of positive media traction across the weekend. I think my throat is still a little bit scratchy from speaking to all of the various television reporters that showed up in opportune times. But I think that, again, in reflection of the event, the event was going to be successful from, the first note that a band hit on Friday afternoon, because we had, through our efforts over the last 5 years, brought the event back. And so that was really our first demarcation for success. It really was asking the question that I think many in the community had been asking us is, could we do it? And I think that, again, we definitively proved that we could. Now, that being said, we also learned a lot of valuable lessons as an organization, not the least of which is a question of scale, where as an organization, with a core group of 8 members, what is the lift that group has to take on in order for an event like this to be successful? And what are the other things that group then can ask the broader community to take on with them in order to shoulder the load? And I think that, again, we learned a lot of valuable lessons about delegation and collaboration, especially, again, as it relates to the fact that, again, for most entrepreneurs, we all believe we can, we all believe we're world beaters and we're, conquerors that can do everything.
Of
And I
course.
think that within every organization, whether you're a solopreneur or have a team around you, we all wear various hats. But I think that the challenge that we're able to accomplish just because of sheer adrenaline and a lot of sleepless nights was the recognition that some of the hats that we wore were either too small or we wore uneasily. And that, for by and large, a lot of the things that we as an organization knew we missed over the weekend weren't things that visitors, would readily see, but they're things that nagged at us because of the fact, again, that these were relatively easy things to overcome. Things like signage and information, where
Mhm.
we had an event where people eventually found their way to places because the footprint of the festival grounds was relatively small. But we could have done a much better job of informing them of where to go and how to get
Mhm.
there. Similarly, we know that the event, again, it drew a lot of people into the community. It was a very well attended event with a lot of nostalgia, a lot of positive feedback. But it was also an event that, when you think about kind of the buzz in the community over the course of the weekend, it was an event where a lot of the activity was focused on our festival grounds, which were in a park by Lake Michigan. But for those of you who know the community, you know that downtown Two Rivers is about a quarter mile west of there. And you didn't see the same kind of buzz in downtown Two Rivers or in many of our neighborhoods about the event as you saw at the festival grounds. So it really pointed to, I think, the limitations of engagement of the community writ large beyond specifically the amount of time that we took in or spent, mainly again just making sure the event happened. So if we're focused, as I believe we are, on making Snowfest something that the community embraces and the community co-creates, then we know that there is a business community that we haven't yet engaged. And similarly, there is an audience that, again, has broad nostalgia and is really interested in investing in the event, that we're just waiting to see whether it would come back. And now that it
Mhm.
is, I think you will begin to see that engagement. But we know that there are audiences both within the community as well as outside of the community that we have to do a much better job of intentionally engaging.
Mhm. A couple of really fantastic lessons in there, because
Mhm.
I think I mean, this even applies with online communities. If you're trying to hold an event in the community, you want as many people to know about it, you need to visit the different stakeholders or the different groups within the community to make sure that they understand what's going to be happening. And even as and I think this is a hard lesson sometimes for us to accept, that even if we've done our level best to reach those different groups, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to respond.
Right.
And sometimes the key to that is just time.
Mhm.
Just recognizing that maybe the first year you run it, they're not going to necessarily know about it. But then, like, some people, they're from Missouri, like, they need to be shown that,
Mhm.
whoa, this was a real thing. It really happened. It was really a good event. And then becomes then a springboard, for the next year. You start to build momentum with those successes. So I know it was a Herculean effort to do this, and it was an event that was defunct for what, over 20 years, or close
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, just to give again the audience a little bit of context in terms of the history of the event and why the event folded, was the fact that the event was something that had been stewarded by a variety of community groups and service organizations, with the longest tenured and last organization to run the event being the Two Rivers JCs. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the JCs are or have a very unique service model or membership model to the organization, in that it's a young men's service organization that does have an age limit. So once I reach the age of 35, I can no longer be a member of the JCs.
Hmm.
Well, for communities like Two Rivers that have aged rapidly and have seen populations such as myself, quite frankly, leave the community seeking other opportunities in recent decades, for an organization, again, that requires the engagement of those in their early 20s or 20s and early 30s, if you don't have that feedstock, you're not going to sustain the group. And that's essentially what happened to the JCs, and then by extension, Snowfest. So really what we wanted to do in the pivot, I think, that we made with the model of how we're sustaining Snowfest moving forward is that we have a broader based community group that is focused solely on the logistics and standing up the event. But what we further then engaged throughout the weekend and in the lead up to the weekend is our organization then further engages other service organizations to support, whether it's through volunteering, whether it's through promotion, whether it's through even sponsoring or in standing up elements of the event themselves, where we've decided that we're going to shoulder the heavy lift of making this thing happen. And then our ask to community groups really across the region is to come in and invite them in to help us make it successful. Mm-hmm. So that, again, it's a much more sustainable model because of the fact that you're not looking at a single organization ensuring its success. It's really a variety of organizations that those parts can change over time because, again, the event remains constant. It's really just what happens under it that can then pivot.
It's very insightful. I mean, I think recognizing that a weakness of the events in the past was that there was a single group that was making it happen, and so you're building some resiliency into the planning process that hopefully carries it forward into the future and beyond. I assume you're planning to keep doing these for the foreseeable future.
And well, we have announced our dates for 2022. They'll be Snowfest 2022 is scheduled for July 22nd through the 24th. We actually held our first planning meeting yesterday to begin discussing what next year will look like. But I think that one of the things that I think that anyone who's worked in community building and especially community revitalization will tell you is that the success of the first year doesn't ensure success of subsequent years. In that the hard work of community building is really in the second year of an event. Because you will have a curious audience that shares nostalgia about what had happened in the past, as well as those that want to check out something new. But the success of that event then just establishes expectations for the next. And I think that the challenge that the group will have is to make sure, again, that those expectations are met while, again, being realistic about what an organization of our size and a community of the size of Two Rivers can really accommodate as a summer weekend. At the same time, one of the advantages that I think that we have for next year is the fact that we have the pleasure and advantage of time. Even though we planned for Snowfest 2021 over a period of around 3 years in fits and starts, we didn't know that the reality of Snowfest happening was well established until March when we announced our music lineup. So we had a very intensive 3-month sprint to get it to the finish line. Now we have better expectations and a better understanding of what we need to do. We have established contacts with people that we know that we need to leverage to do it. So a lot of the tedium detailed work is already in the works. Such that, for all of us involved with the group, we're looking forward to getting much better sleep next year. Because again, it's like a nervous father. The first one is the one that keeps you awake. The second one is the one that keeps you young.
Sure. Well, I sure hope it works out that way for you. Yeah, I know that it's interesting. 3 months seems to be that magic number. For event planning. Like it seems like every large scale event that I've been involved with, there's sort of that intensive 3-month sprint to get you there, to get it live. I think even for the most involved organizers, it's difficult to wrap your head fully around it until it's becoming a much more imminent thing. And that 3-month, that 90-day kind of thing seems to be what comes up again and again for me as a lesson learned out of this. Really powerful. Jeff, I wanted to ask you about sort of maybe the broader implications
Mm-hmm.
of doing events like this. You're an economist by vocation and training, and kind of think about how events have impacts on local economies and job growth and other things like that. What if an organization or a group is thinking about doing some similarly large scale events, what and they need to kind of spell out like what the value means, what it drives really for a community. What can you speak to that a little bit, maybe?
Well, I think that there are, obviously several different ways rather that events like this can impact communities. I think, again, obviously we did have a positive economic impact. We know that again, we brought 5,000 people down to the lakeshore. We know that those people, obviously both spent in buying food and beverages from us, but we also supported a carnival vendor that we brought on as a partner, as well as a variety of food truck vendors that came in that also, again, did well over the weekend. So we know that there was a direct spend from the week, and that's what any event does. But I think that the best events, at least as they relate to their communities, also spur additional spending. So we know that the campgrounds and hotels in the community were filled, and those owners were generally happy. Now, I will put an asterisk on that, of course, because ours was not the only event happening that weekend. There was also a fairly sizable girls' softball tournament happening at the same time, which, again, was another lesson for us because the hosting two big events at the same time in two different locations did put a strain on our Parks and Recreation Department, who should be credited for a Herculean effort in making sure that all parties were kept happy and sane. But that being said, again, it really did point to the fact that our community has the ability to host several large events, but that we probably shouldn't do it very often. So we knew that, again, there were a lot of primary and secondary economic impacts from spending and indirect spending. But I think that for a community like Two Rivers that has undergone a significant transformation really over the last 2 decades, with the decline of several industrial partners, and really the reshaping of its river frontage along the East Twin River. It is a community for those of us who had been gone for a while, in return, wouldn't recognize. So, for example, if I think about the landmarks that have gone away since the last time Snowfest was held back in 1998, I can point to a new high school, where the high school that I graduated from in 1995 no longer exists. It is now, that space is now occupied by a city park and a multifamily residential development. The church that I attended as a youth is now a Walgreens pharmacy. And both of the employers that my father and mother worked for, that were next to each other on the East Twin River, have been demolished and are open for development. The character of the community has fundamentally changed. And I think that for those people coming back to the community for the first time since the last Snowfest, they will see the significance of that change. And they will also then see the opportunities that exist within it. And again, that's why I see this as an opening of a conversation. Because the invitation for that pop audience to come into Two Rivers for Snowfest this year was to see, well, here's this great music event in this beautiful park. The next conversation is, well, here's this great music event in this beautiful park. What are the other things that are happening over the course of the summer? And then what does the residential market look like in that community where all these interesting things are happening over the summer? Or for an entrepreneur, what is the business opportunity that might exist in this market that you can take advantage of to leverage the festival that you just attended? And those are the conversations with more specific audiences that really build the community beyond what the event does, because the event just shines a spotlight. Now the question is, well, how do you then engage the audience that followed that light in a broader conversation about what Two Rivers could mean to them. And I think that's why these events can be really powerful tools for civic engagement.
That's really wonderful, Jeff, and great insights as well about some of the broader implications. So we're getting down to the end of our time here, but I did want to ask you, in addition to all that's on your plate, with Snowfest obviously, and with your day job, the things you're doing there, anything else coming up for you that you wanted to put a plug in for?
Well, I think another thing that, again, we can hop back on the stream and discuss, and Todd, I know you've been a great supporter of in the past, is that I, like you, are very passionate about entrepreneurship and building entrepreneurs wherever they may exist. And I believe that, again, the one advantage that digital communities in this digital economy play is the capacity for an entrepreneur, wherever they are, to reach a broader audience because of the opportunity that online engagement provides them. So for the past 3 years, I, along with Todd, as well as others in our community, have hosted what we refer to as Light Up the Lakeshore, and more specifically, the Light Up the Lakeshore Student Business Idea Competition. It is a regional high school business idea competition, which is somewhat unique in that we have high school students from several high schools competing against each other for scholarship support, business advice, and insights. That was an event that took a break over the last year, largely because of the fact that we did not want to stress our high school students out any more than they already were with the chaotic schedule of learning in a pandemic. But it's an event that we will be bringing back next May. So I'm looking forward to, again, seeing a bright new class of young entrepreneurs and their brilliant ideas, and sitting in an audience and just pinching myself, with regret for not thinking of some of the things that they are thinking of 20 years ago.
Absolutely. And I think that the Light at the Lakeshore Business Idea Competition, like Snowfest, is again designed to help certain audiences or constituencies, in this case students, see the possibilities for what is available within a community, and especially for a community like ours, which has an aging population. The average age is what are we, north of 50 or something, or getting close?
I think it's
48,
still sitting
49.
at 46, but that's
46.
still 10 years over the state average.
Still trending over, right? So helping those young people see that there is a viable place for them within this community. You don't need to move away. You can find a meaningful career or start a meaningful business here in this market. And again, just helping to turn on the light bulb for people to understand that there are possibilities, within a given community. So,
yep.
Jeff, we're over time, but this has been a really fascinating conversation. It's great to hear about the success of the event. Congratulations, and to your brother Tony, and for all those volunteers who put in time and effort and money to build something that's bringing back the past in a new way. Within your community, within our community, and I hope you come back on the show and we can talk a little bit more about some other related topics around community building as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Todd. Consider the invitation standing, and thank you again for everything that you're doing to shine a light on all these wonderful communities that we're building.
Thank you, Jeff. And for those of you, if you're catching this on the restream or the replay, I absolutely always invite questions, comments, ideas. I try to respond to everybody that responds on the chat, and hope that you're able to join me this coming Wednesday for a conversation with the folks who run engineeringunleashed.com. Becky and Michael, again, dear friends. Until then, I hope that the rest of your Monday goes very well. I hope that you have an excellent rest of the week, and I will see you on Wednesday. Goodbye, everybody.